Today is 1977. This is Gert Casselman, and I'm going to talk to my mother, Lydia Wiatrowski. Her maiden name was Abraham, and she will tell us something about her life when she was in Europe, and I will let her tell in her own words what she can remember.
I am Lydia Wiatrowski, and I'm going to tell about out of our home. It was in 1915, during the First World War, and all the German people in Russia, that is in Ukraine, they were made to get out of their homes. They had to leave everything. It was in a harvest time, and the grain was already, most of it was cut, and it was set up in sheaves or whatever you call it. And, well, anyway, we had to leave during that time, and all the people had to vacate their places and leave everything that they had, all the possessions, their cattle and their everything, and they had to, while they come around and they told them that in 3 days they had to be vacating all their homes and everything. They had to be, and if they didn't go, why, they were just made to go out. And so we started out on with the team, horses and the wagon, whatever we could load on, and we just traveled from town to town, and it was hard for all the people. Some of them had children, and the weather was bad. Sometimes it was raining and all, and there was no roof to get under and nothing. They had to just be in the open like that. Oh, it was terrible.
Who all was home at that time? Was Uncle Alex there too?
Oh yeah, we were all young. I was not quite 16. That was 1915. I'm born 1902. She was only a young girl, and so Alex was home, and so was Martha. We just all home, you know.
And your older brothers, were they still there?
Oh, my older brothers were both in the United States of America, because over here, so they left when they were quite young, and so it was quite a skip between us. The oldest one, and Alex.
What was his name? Julius?
The oldest one was Julius, and then was Gus, and the next one was Alex. But between Gus and Alex, there was 7 of them that died.
Oh, I didn't remember that.
See, there was 12 in our family, and only 5 were living. So there was 7 of them in between. They were gone. See, there's quite a skip between the 2 oldest and the 3 youngest. Now, the 3 youngest are still living, and the oldest are all passed on. And so, well, anyway, during the time when we were traveling, we traveled with a team of horses as far as we could go. We had made, my father had made a covered wagon like they do now. The Southerners, you see them in the olden days when they traveled with covered wagon. That's about the way it looked then. You know, people, they covered their wagons so that their possessions wouldn't get wet from the rain if they had a team of horses and wagon to travel with. But there were some people, that, you know, like the women that had their husbands in a war, and some of them had their sons in the war fighting for the country, and the women with the smaller children, they were driven out of their homes. They didn't have to take nothing with them. They had to open the doors and let the cattle out, and whatever you had, you know, hogs and everything was going wild, dogs and everything was going wild. And it's terrible.
Yeah.
I tell you, the one know where we was going. A lot of people asked us where we was going, but we didn't know where we was going. We just told them we didn't know. Like I said before, they just took us from one town to the next, and then that town they told us we had to go to the next, and then we had to report again. And then they told us to go to the next, and those that didn't have their own transportation, that they had to be transported by somebody else. And as I said, you know, they just put their belongings on the ground, and whether it was raining or shining or whatever, it didn't make no difference. They were just in the open.
Just a lot of people just
and we traveled that way, and a lot of people, they was wealthy people, but they didn't have no cash, you know, to take with them, and while they were just as poor as anyone else, and so many of them took it so hard, they just went crazy in their head, and a lot of them took sick and they died along the way, and there was no stopping. We couldn't stop or bury them or anything, or have a funeral like people have nowadays. They just buried them wherever they could, make a hole and bury them, and went on. They didn't dare stay. Or somebody took sick, and if they took them away to a hospital, they told you that they take them to a hospital, you never seen them more. That was the end of them. They didn't know where you went, and they didn't, those were traveled, didn't know where they went, and the same thing happened to those women that had husbands in war or sons. They couldn't communicate with one another either, because they didn't know where they were in the war, because they went on from place to place in the war. And the women, they went on from place to place, and so nobody could communicate that way. A lot of people, they got lost that way, they never saw one another again. The women didn't see their husbands, and the husbands didn't see their wives or family. And so we traveled on, then when we got to the waters, we couldn't go no further with the steam, but then they had some barges there, you know, what the barges open, you know, there's no top on it. We loaded all the people in there with their belongings, and then we traveled several days in those barges. And then again, we got out of there and then put us on a train, you know, on those freight trains. Then we traveled on there, and they didn't know where they wanted to take us either, but they just took us on, and we went way into Russia to Orenburg, and some of them went to Samaria and all those places. And so anyway, a couple of times they took us to one place, and then they decided they didn't want to stay. They took us right back again to a different place, and they didn't know what to do with us, and we didn't know where we was going. So it was just one of those things, and then finally they took us as far as Orenburg, and then we stayed there. And the people where they unloaded us, people were real nice, the Russian people. They wasn't bad at all. They helped us in every way they could, but there's not much they could do, you know.
At that time you could speak Russian?
Oh yeah, we could all speak Russian, you know, because we was brought up in Russian. We went to Russian school, you know, we could speak Russian. So that's the way it went, on, and then when up to 17, when the Tsar was thrown off of their throne, you heard about that, you know, then everybody was free to go, and we was all released, we could go where we wanted to. So most people that had a home up there, they went back to their home, but they couldn't find nothing there either. Most of them were occupied by people, and they didn't even have a place to get in their own homes. So a lot of them sold their homes, and others, they didn't find a home that was burned down already or whatnot. And so after that, a couple of years after that, then we went to Germany, and from one place to another, and then from Germany we come to the United States. It was nothing good no matter where we went.
Where did you live there? That was in Germany?
In Germany.
And how did you make connections to come to America?
To relatives over here, to cousins, to Wenzel family.
To Reinhold Wenzel? That's where you went to?
Yeah, Bob Wenzel, of course we. Reinhold Wenzel, Bob Wenzel.
Were you writing back and forth to them whenever you could?
Yeah, we did.
How long was Reinhold and Bob Wenzel in the United States before you came? About how many years?
Oh, I don't remember, but many years. They left Russia over there when I was quite young yet. See, when the Wenzel family come over here, they was poor too, and they had a big family, and they took their children all, but the two oldest ones, and that was Reinhold and Richard. They left them with our family. And they went on because they didn't have enough money to pay for their fare for all of the family. And then when they come down here and made enough money, then they send them the fare, and then the boys come along over here too. But how much longer, I don't know, whether it was a couple of years or a year, I don't know that.
Well, you left out the part about your mother dying along the way. Was that before you got to Germany, that your mother died? My grandmother?
That's right. That was before we went to Germany. On the way from Russia to Germany, when we went over to Germany, then we had to, on a line, of course, we had to stop, you know, they had to, you know, over there, they had to be bloused, and they had a regular, how would you call it? I don't know how to say that.
Maybe immunization?
No, that wasn't that. But anyway, they had to stop to check on all the papers and on their health. They had to see whether they were healthy and things like that, and whether they had to go through all the cleaning places, see whether they clean. They had to go through, they called it employment over there. You know, they had to go through several baths, steam baths, and all the clothes and everything was steamed out. And
so you don't carry anything
so
across.
there came no disease across. I don't know what they called it. And that's where Alex took sick. And he had to go to the hospital where we could have traveled on, you know, but when he took sick, why, the parents didn't want to go and leave him behind because they know they wouldn't see him again, so they stayed on until he got better, and he got sick with first he got sick with pneumonia, and then he contracted they call it the yellow fever. I think it was the yellow typhoid. They call it, in German, they call it Flecktyphus, and it's a typhoid type of disease. It has the yellow spots, you know, all over your body. They call it Flecktyphus in German. Anyway, it's blotches all over your body. And if the blotches come out, if you're healthy enough to throw them off, why you go through. But when you're a weak person, you just don't make it. They go in just like a measles. You know, the measles go in, it's hard on you. And that's the way they work too. But it's a more dangerous disease than a measles. And so my brother, he got better. He go through all right. My mother, she didn't want to stay outside because it was a contagious disease. You either had to go in the hospital or stay out, you know. And Mother didn't want to stay out, so she went in. They gave her a bed and she could sleep there, and she stayed with him and nursed him. But it didn't take very long, and then she took sick. She got the same disease, and my brother got better, and she took sick, and she was only sick 9 days and all, and she died.
There in the hospital?
Yeah, in the hospital.
She never left the hospital?
No. She never got to Germany.
But your father was with you at that time. And did he come over to America before you did or after?
He come over before, but we were supposed to go out together. But in the meantime, I had met your father, and of course, I didn't want to go alone, and so I stayed behind, and we got married. And well, we were married at the time already when they left, only they didn't have no papers for him made out. See, my papers were made out, but his weren't.
Dad's weren't?
No.
Oh, I see.
So they made to make the other papers out, and in the meantime, when they went across, but they lost my papers on the way somehow, because they were all made out at the same time, and they left them before they crossed the ocean, I guess, whatever you call it in Hamburg. Anyway, that's where they sailed from, and that's where the papers stayed behind. And then later on, they claimed they couldn't find their papers, and it took a couple of years before everything got straightened out again, before I could go. And your father's papers were all fixed up and everything ready to go, and mine were still not found. And so then I stayed behind alone and let him go, and that's where he got here before I did. I stayed there with you by myself, and so when he went, and he had them search for those papers before he crossed, you know, when he got down to Hamburg, and he had them search for them, and they found them. They were there, only they didn't take the trouble to look for them. They always kept writing back that the papers weren't there, they were lost. So after that, then there were different laws again, and then I had to have different papers again for one thing and another, you know, the laws changing every so often. And so it took quite a while before I got across yet.
So then just you and I came across together.
Yes.
And when did you arrive in the United States, do you remember?
1925 in March.
In March. And you came to New York Harbor. And did Dad meet you there?
Yeah. No, he didn't meet me there. I come from there alone up to here. He met me over here at the station. But they,
by here, you mean where? Benton Harbor?
Benton Harbor.
Oh, by train?
By train, yeah.
And then you lived?
I lived at Rhino
at Coloma, Michigan. And how long were you there with him before Dad went to work for Friday Brothers?
I was only just quite a few years.
You know what I can remember about the time when we were at Ryan. I must have been quite small, but I can remember during lunchtime that you had to go and retie the cow. That was one of your jobs, or, well, anyway, you did it. You had to come home and fix lunch and go out and retie the cow. I can remember that.
We wasn't at Ryan Windows then anymore.
Oh, wasn't that right?
That was when we lived with Riley Brothers. We lived on the corner there in that house at that time.
Well, it seems like I remember
We
the day
did not
at
have a
Ryan
cow
Windows.
when we lived at Ryan Windows.
Well, I don't know that it was your cow. Maybe it was his cow. Did he have a cow that you had to tie?
I don't remember that. I don't know.
And then one time I
But we did
remember...
have a cow. It could be possible.
Yeah, I remember that you did that, and you were so busy trying to get lunch and tie that cow over. I can remember that. And another thing I remember was that being in the orchard, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I must have gone where there was a big bunch of poison ivy because I had poison ivy real bad after that.
That was on the Friday place.
Oh, that was on the Friday
place.
Because well, how many years did you work there at the Friday place? Because I started school there, I know, with Norbert and Kurt Abraham.
Yeah, quite a few. Well, we lived there in the corner, and then we moved to the Hartford farm, you know.
Yeah.
We still worked for Friday Brothers until, well, we left them in, I believe it was in 32. So yes.
When you moved to the house where you're living at now. Yeah, I remember that. When you had someone put in electricity, and see, that was really something to have electricity. Is there anything in particular you can remember about when you started out on the farm by yourself? You raised a lot of tomatoes, I know.
Yes, we always raised tomatoes even before we had to work in tomatoes, even before we was working for ourselves. But it was no different. It was all the same. In fact,
let's see, Elsie was born when you lived at Reinhold Rental, wasn't she?
yes.
Well, that pretty well brings us up to the time when, let's see, when we moved to Bainbridge, I was about the third or fourth grade, I think. Because I was in the little room at the Bainbridge school when I started, I think.
Yeah, but you
And then I went to the big room shortly after that, I remember.
You started to go to school at the Bainbridge school, at that other school, you know, on, what's it called? I don't even remember. Not the Bainbridge Center School, the other school. You remember that's when you first went, when the Abraham boys went?
Oh,
same time. That's when your first school.
That was at the, didn't they call that the brick school? What's the name of that road that it's on, where the school is on? It goes right past
Friday Road.
Friday Road?
Mm-hmm.
It's on the way when you go to Millburg almost,
Yeah.
you know. Yeah, I remember I started there and I got sick that year and missed a lot of school.
Yeah, you had the touch of scarlet fever, I think it was. Or scarlet, the doctor called it scarlatina. It wasn't the scarlet fever, because it was a touch of scarlet fever, but he called it scarlatina, but you peeled in your hands and in your...
Yeah, I remember, because the teacher didn't pass me because I didn't really go to school enough, and of course when I started I couldn't talk English.
Yeah, I know,
and
that was another
Kurt and Norbert couldn't either, and the three of us would talk German to each other out loud, and the poor teacher didn't know what to do with us, and put each of us in a corner with a dunce cap on. I can remember that. But then when we moved over to Hartford, Mrs. Gross was my teacher there, and she really did teach me a lot.
Yeah, she was very nice.
Learned quite fast then. And I remember her telling me No, it wasn't either. It was her husband. I remember her husband was real nice too, and he said to me once, see, this two of us was in the same grade. It was Helene Geisler and I, and it was always hard for me to learn, and he said that really it was a little bit harder perhaps, but he thought I did better because of the fact that it was harder for me, and she didn't have that handicap in language, and her mother was a teacher, and her mother could help her with a lot of things. So he thought, he really
didn't have no help from nowhere.
He gave me encouragement and made me feel real good, whether I deserved it or not. But I always liked both of them. And then when we moved to Bainbridge, when I was 12 years old, is when I got hit with a ball on my leg, and after doctoring with a couple different doctors and the wrong diagnosis of TB on the bone, they thought it was, and put a cast on.
The first doctor said that it was, but it wasn't at all. It was something else.
Yeah.
That's what they claimed.
Well, we went to 3 different doctors, and one at Waterbury, I remember, and then the one there at the hospital that put the cast on. I can't remember his name.
Well, that was at Mercy, the one with Dr.
Remember his name?
Elliott.
Elliott?
Yeah, Dr. Elliott was the one who put the cast on, and he said he claimed it was TB on the bone.
Yeah. And then when I was home and was suffering, so Dad cut the cast off.
And he sent you home for 6 weeks. He said, I'll see you in 6 weeks. And when you come home, it wasn't even 24 hours. You couldn't stand the pain any longer. That's when so Dad had to cut off the cast. And then we had an X-ray taken by another doctor. And
McDonald wasn't his name.
McDonald,
the chiropractor.
And he couldn't operate. But he said if you had come to me when you went to Elliott, why, he could have helped you. But
he knew right away what
it was. But he said it was gone too far, and blood poison had set in, and we had to have help quick, had to have an operation.
And he sent us to Grand Rapids,
right,
to Dr. Hodgin.
Right.
And I can't remember, there was another doctor, too, that helped him. And then they operated. And I remember then when I got better, well enough to leave the hospital, but not well enough to be home because we lived too far from the hospital. The doctor had to check me occasionally to put me in Budget home. And there I got impatient because I thought I had missed a meal. I was in a wheelchair, and I went down to a room that was lower level, down a ramp, and as I did so, and I was told not to do that alone, but somehow I thought that I was late. They were eating. I thought I missed my meal. And as I went down to that lower level, my leg that was operated on for osteomyelitis was extended out straight, and it hit the floor first and snapped my bone in my hip. So then I had to go. Well, I didn't go back to the hospital right away because they had to contact you to get your permission to do something with me. They couldn't do anything with me. I had to lay there until they contacted you. You didn't have a phone. They called the neighbors. And then you had to come down and sign papers. I don't remember how long it was, but it seemed like a long time. Anyway, then they operated and put a wire in there to wire my to get it.
They call it a pin, yeah.
Yeah. And then I had to be back in the hospital for quite a while after that. And I remember the doctor writing in my autograph book. I must have it around here somewhere, but probably up in the attic somewhere, about, he said, China doll, you're 1 in 1,000. The best thing you can do for me is to watch that leg. Oh, it was Dr. France. That's who it was, Dr. France.
I know I should know his name.
Yeah. I often think,
but I couldn't
now if they ever think of me and wonder how I am, but I don't know how to contact them to tell them about my life now. They'd be pleased to know, I think, that I never had any recurrence.
Yeah. And there's another thing, because the doctors, they never did, all they gave me was peroxide and bandages to put on because your leg was draining constantly. You had to have bandages all the time. And so I used my own remedy, but I never did tell the doctor that. Every time we brought you down here, they always were so pleased how good we were coming. He always says, "Keep it up, Mother, you're doing good work, keep it up." And so I never did tell him. He didn't ask me what I did, or if I did put anything else on. I put on Invajustine, and I had you lay in the sun and put on Lysol solution, that was the main thing, that helped more than anything because it disinfected the wound and also healed. And then the Invajustine, what I put on, that drove from the bottom out all that matter what was in it, what had to come out, until everything was drawn out and it was healing on the outside along with, when every time I washed it off with the Lysol, it healed it up, and when it healed up, it was healed up. It didn't break out anywhere else. And when we come in here, he said that he was 1 in 1,000 but healed up like that. Most of them, when they heal up, it breaks out in other places because there was still pus inside what didn't come out. He used Invajustine, threw it all out. Yeah. And the Lysol healed at the same time, and so when it was healed up, it was healed up for good.
I remember the time when I was in the hospital when Elsie, of course, she was home there, and she had to work pretty hard to help with things on the farm there. She was quite young, and she really had to work hard. Of course, she's always been a hard worker. So.
Yeah.
Well,
it was hard going.
Yeah, I know it was. I remember when I came back home and started school again, I was in 7th grade, I believe. I was in the 7th grade, and I was at the hospital, or at the home, because they had some schooling there. But I remember I was on a walking caliper when I came home, and then I was on crutches for a while, and I seemed to get along pretty good.
Yeah, the process, your legs stayed a little shorter than the other, but it's all right. Anyway.
Never bothered me, though. I've been able to do most anything I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a blessing.
So, now let's see. Dad died at the age of 56, wasn't it?
57.
57?
Let's see, he died in March of 58, and he would have been
57 in May.
Yeah, he would have been 57 in May. It wasn't quite 57.
Because I remember that we lived where we are living now, here at Parma, Michigan, and I was working at Opal Brothers at the time, and they were so good about letting me go home when Dad was in the hospital. And I stayed with you until after he died, and even, through after the funeral when I came back. And we were living at the Hartford place then, and let's see, Elsie got married when we were in Texas. We're leaving out a lot about when I got married.
Yeah.
It's kind of a hodgepodge here.
If you think of every little detail, it would take hours to tell it all.
Well, I know it, but I feel that it's important to have a record of this because one can forget things so easily, and the children may not realize that they want to know these things, but when they get older, then they'll wonder about their parents, their grandparents, and this would be one way to record it. So I thought it would be real nice to do so.